Baruch here with genConnect.com, and we're joined by Robert Barnett, a senior partner at Williams & Connolly. Mr. Barnett, it's good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you. I've known you since you were 3 years old.
That is almost true. That is almost true, and I have looked up to you since I was 3 years old.
That's very
So it's nice to sit with you.
And I've worn your ties since I was 20 years old.
And I couldn't choose a better model.
That's right.
And and I wouldn't be able to afford your fees, so I'm glad you wore them on your own.
I can't afford your ties.
There
So
we
it's
go.
the
We're
same
even.
thing.
Done.
It's the same thing.
Well, you really have created an extremely unique career for yourself. There's nobody else. You say, what does Robert Barnett do? To say attorney doesn't begin to explain what you do on a daily basis. You've really created your own space. And I'd love to see if you could share with our audience some of the career lessons that you've learned in terms of really carving out that niche.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm a big believer in telling young people, particularly, to get a basic, solid education. People talk about pre-law, or with all due respect, journalism school. I think that, particularly undergrad, the most important thing is to take Shakespeare, to take art history, to learn geography, and get a basic education. That's number one. Number two is learn to write and learn to speak. And if you can go through your educational experience, that could be college, it could be graduate school, gaining those skills, you will put yourself in line to succeed. It drives me nuts, the plague that has befallen America, where every other word from a young person is like or you know. I don't like and I don't know, so don't tell me I do. And when someone comes in for an interview and talks like that, I say, is this person educated? Does this person know how to speak? So a basic education and an ability not to go with the flow and talk like your friends, but to talk intelligently, even in an informal situation. I think that the best people in my law school class, for instance, were music majors, because they, in addition to studying music, they got a basic good education. And so I'm not a big believer in pre-law or specific school, except when you go to law school, obviously. I'm a big believer in getting a good, solid, basic education, learning to read, learning to write, learning to speak.
So life skills versus vocational skills.
Yeah, vocational schools are critically important. Those come later.
Right.
Or if you want a vocation. Of course you should. Vocational training is something we lag on in this country, and I hope will improve. But for most people who aren't sure where they're going, but want to succeed, want to get a good job, want to have a family, basic education, basic skills.
What's been the most memorable lesson that you've learned in working with all of the politicians, business people that you've worked with at the top of their careers? What's been a lesson that really stands apart?
There are a lot of them. I try to remember the old saying about when you meet them going up, you might meet them coming down. Even the people you most disagree with, even the people you least respect, try your best to be respectful, try the best you can to treat them with dignity. Now, if they cross you, you get even. That's fine. But if they don't, I think it's always best to try to be good on interpersonal things and to be responsive. One of the big failings in the business aspect of our society is people don't answer. If someone calls you or someone sends you a message, respond. Even if it's to say, I won't get back to you for a day because I'm busy. Because people appreciate that. They wouldn't have reached out to you unless they wanted or needed something. And so you owe them the respect of trying to respond. Even if as I say, it's that I'll be back to you later.
And I have to say, you have been, every time that I've emailed you, you respond within an hour. And it's not because I'm important, it's because you are so kind and so respectful.
I try.
And I've always been amazed that even somebody who has such precious amount of time, small amount of time, and yet you always respond.
I try. The real plague of personal communications that we all had visited upon us, social media, Twitter, Facebook, etc., is that it's cheapened communication, and people waste time on sending out things that no one really cares about and aren't necessary. And that means there's a flood of things to deal with. So in addition to being responsive, you have to separate the proverbial wheat from the proverbial chaff, and you have to know what's really important. on the one hand, Blackberries, iPhones, etc., are a blessing. On the other hand, they're a curse. They help me do my business, but they also create unrealistic expectations on how you can give answers to people. And there's a risk in giving premature or inadequate answers that can be extremely devastatingly negative. So the world that we live in is so different. We were talking today in a session about how in the 1976 presidential campaign, which was the first one I worked on, all we really cared about was what the 3 evening news anchors and the Sunday show said. Now, in the 2012 election, which I also worked on, you've got to deal with everything from Twitter to Drudge to BuzzFeed and those are fine things, but the overwhelming tsunami of content can cause us to fail to prioritize.
Mr. Barnett, you give so much advice to so many people at the highest level. What's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Wow, that's a hard one. I don't know. I've received a lot of good advice. I guess the thing I quote most often comes from my late senior partner, the great Edward Bennett Williams, who founded our firm and I think was one of the greatest lawyers of all times. And I find myself quoting this to friends, to clients all the time. He used to say, "He who chases justice often catches it," which is a way of saying, don't be too quick. Don't be too sure of your position, because you might end up getting it coming back at you. So be thoughtful, be patient, understand that there's a process, hopefully due process involved. I don't know if that's a life lesson, but it's certainly something I took to heart and have conveyed to a lot of people.
And you certainly embody that.
I hope.
Mr. Barnett, thank you.
Thank you.
And to learn more about Robert Barnett and all of his incredible work, be sure to check out genConnect.com.